In Northern California this morning, a hiker is recovering after a 5-day ordeal stranded on a remote beach without food or water. No one, it appeared, even knew he was there, and had it not been for a passing fishing boat, rescuers say the man likely would have never been found. We're going to talk to the Coast Guard team that rescued him in a moment. But first, here's NBC's Lee Cowan.
Cape Mendocino, the westernmost point of the California coast. Remote, beautiful, but as it turns out, a very unlucky place for a hiker to fall. It was here where scrawled in the sand across a lonely beach was a plea. Help. A rescue message so cliche it almost looked like it was a movie. Help! But this was not Hollywood.
He'd gone 5 days without food or water, and that's pretty much, you're starting to get into a really dangerous area at that point.
Sitting just to the left of the H was its desperate writer, 50-year-old Phoenix Brooks. The shore's rocky cliffs had done him in. He told rescuers he fell a week ago this morning and had remained on that beach alone with his injuries until this lone crabbing boat just happened by. Brooks used an orange buoy washed up from a crab pot to signal the boat wildly, and despite his injuries and the frigid water, tried to swim out to meet it.
There was probably a 4 or 5 foot surf there. The waves knocked him back to the beach, and he didn't attempt that again.
Instead, the fishing boat captain radioed the Coast Guard, who arrived with a helicopter and eventually lifted Brooks from his sandy prison. In the end, in a world of cell phones and GPSs, it was a fishing boat and an old-fashioned message in the sand that led to a happy, almost Hollywood ending. For today, Lee Cowan, NBC News, Los Angeles.
And joining us exclusively this morning are Lieutenant Todd Vorenkamp and Petty Officer Second Class Christopher Hoffman from the Coast Guard. Gentlemen, good morning.
Good morning.
Lieutenant, let me start with you. Take us back to Friday. You were coming off of a 24-hour shift. You were heading back to base. You get this call that someone had written the word help in the sand. What did you think? This was not a routine rescue for you. What did you think immediately?
Well, our first thought was that it sounded a little bit unbelievable, but the Coast Guard likes to lean forward, as we say on these cases, and you always assume that somebody's in distress, and until you know differently, you proceed down that road. We were on the way back from another case, returned to base, got fuel, and then headed down the coast. But the initial report was that a man on the beach had signaled a fishing boat and had help written in the sand, which is pretty non-standard SAR case as far as we're concerned. But we headed down there with the intent of saving a life.
Petty Officer Chris, let me ask you a question. You were the one lower down onto the beach. What did you see when you got down there, and what was the hiker's condition like?
When I first got down to him, he was sitting down, not able to stand up. Right away he told me that his legs were numb and he couldn't get up, and he told me he'd been there for 3 days. I was shocked at that point that he'd been down there that long, and then he asked me, "What day is it?" I said, "Well, it's Sunday, or it's Friday." His eyes got huge. He said, "I've been down here since Sunday." And so he was in pretty rough shape, and he hadn't had anything to eat or drink since that Sunday, and not doing too well, but he was able to talk to me.
So for 5 days he survived this fall and sat there with no food or no water at all? Is that what he told you?
That's right. He said there was a small creek up the beach just a little ways that he'd crawl to on Sunday and tried to drink out of it, but the water was bad and made him sick, so he didn't try that one again.
Sure, I'm sure. Did he tell you anything about his fall or where he was coming from? Because he was alone when it happened, right?
He was just out on a hike, he said, and he said he stopped to look out over the ocean, and the cliff gave way, and he fell down the cliff, and he'd been there since.
Lieutenant, let me ask you a question. I know he wrote the word help in the sand, which was great news for him because the fishing boat passing by did see him. Did he do everything he was supposed to in a situation like this?
Based on the equipment that he had with him, which was pretty much just his clothing, he did everything he could. It was fortunate that fishing boat saw him. Definite kudos to the fishing boat for being alert and seeing that on the beach. And then once they saw the gentleman, they stayed on scene until the Coast Guard got there with a motor lifeboat and the helicopter. So that was a huge help. If the fishing boat hadn't seen him, chances are it'd be a much different story.
We invited the hiker onto the show, but he didn't want to speak right now, and we can understand and respect his privacy. Have either of you two spoken to him at all since the rescue?
I have not spoken to him. Actually, I didn't speak to him at any point during the rescue, but Chris talked to him on the beach.
Yeah, and I haven't spoken to him since yet.
All right. Well, Lieutenant Todd Vorenkamp and Petty Officer Chris Hoffman, we thank you so much for joining us. It was a good rescue. Definitely movie script material.